Welcome. You're listening to Ask the Doulas, a podcast where we talk to experts from all over the country about topics related to pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and early parenting. Let's chat.
Hello, this is Kristen with Ask the Doulas. My guest today is Mark Wilhelmsson, and he is with Our Child's Keeper. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So happy to have you here. So you are not only an author of a new book titled Emergency. This book will save your child's life, but you're also a certified infant, child, and adult CPR, AED, and first aid instructor and water safety ambassador through the American Red Cross.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about how you got into this line of work. I know you have a different career prior to getting into CPR and first aid.
Yeah, talk about totally different. So I was a trial investigator in New York City. So I would basically, if there was a crane fell in Manhattan or there was a construction accident, I would take the team and basically we would go in and figure out, who's liable for what. If there were injuries, are they substantiated or, is the plaintiff, lying and that type of thing. So we would do a ton of research on them and find witnesses and everything else. And So those would be cases in civil, supreme, and federal court, which actually that skill set came in handy for what was about to happen with my 2-year-old son. If you want me to go into that, I could. So it was just like, any other morning. At the time, we had just had a pretty new baby girl. So that was our fourth, but she was up sleeping. And my wife is a nurse and she came back super late as usual from her crazy shifts as a nurse. And so she was sleeping at the time. And so Marcus had just turned 2 years old and I was just cutting up some, fresh fruit for him for breakfast. And, I was sitting right across from him, watching him while he was eating. And all of a sudden, everything just sort of stopped. He kind of froze and I just stared at him and knew something was wrong but didn't know what. And, time stands still. Things just kind of stop. And of course, that quickly switches over to him sort of almost telepathically communicating like, save me, something's wrong. And that's when I figured, that he's got to be choking. But the thing is, embarrassingly enough, I had no clue what to do. I froze just like he did. What ended up happening was luck saved him. So he was actually able to eventually violently cough it up and I got a second chance. And, it was one of those scenarios where you start crying with gratitude and then that's quickly followed by being embarrassed and then being angry, frankly. Why was it that I had 4 kids and I didn't know something so basic? So that was the embarrassing part. Like, why was this somehow not on my radar? After getting angry like that, I said, well, I sort of vowed to him and my other kids that, and my wife too, like this is never going to happen again. So I immediately went over and got certified in infant, child, and adult, CPR just by a local instructor. And, we were just having a great conversation about it. And, most of the people in his class, he said were, people who had to be there for their jobs, but the parents that came in, 99.9% of the time, it was because they got caught like I did, basically without these life-saving skills. It freaked them out. And so they did something about it. So that's where my journey sort of began.
Wow. So happy to hear your son's all right, but that definitely would alter your career path. And so it's such important work. And you're right, most parents don't have that training, or maybe we took a CPR class years back and we've forgotten choking and everything we've learned. So it's important to keep up on that. I know as doulas, we, keep up with all of our certifications, and it's really important to families that we serve to have those skills.
Yeah, and I think what's so important about having a doula too, in my mind at least, is because of that, you're aware of the fact that you need to refresh these skills. You don't rely on the certifications. And the reason I say that is getting certified is not enough. The way our memories work, again, as an investigator, I just took this problem and went several layers deep. And one of the things is like, we have terrible memories. We have, within 24 hours, we'll forget up to 60% of what we just learned. And within 48, it's up to 80%. So it's sort of like, scoring an A on a Monday and failing that same test on a Wednesday. When it comes to life-saving skills, you can't fail.
Right.
So you have to have regular refreshers. And so I found that out, again, like through the certification classes when a client of mine in New York, found out kind of the story behind getting certified. And he said, well, what would I do for my daughter? And I think she was 13 or 14 at the time. And I forgot the steps already. And that was just a few days later. And I was like, wait a second, like what is going on? I couldn't go back and explain the sequence to him. So that's when my path started to just, again, take another several layers. I'm like, well, not only do I need refreshers, but just from a knowledge perspective, not so much as a career, but from a knowledge perspective, I also want to, become an instructor and just really dive deep, not only in the subject, but also refresh and then teach other parents how to do the same thing so they don't ever have to be sort of caught with that basically balancing act between tragedy and luck.
Right. And I love that you incorporate water safety. There's so many accidents. I mean, I live in Michigan where there's water everywhere. And so with drowning, young children going into a pool or a pond in their backyard, a river, and so on.
Yeah, and that's one of those amazing things about the class too, is that when I went to go speak with a local swim instructor, she was in her 70s, and so she'd been doing it for like 50 years, and so and the reason why she got into swim safety is because when she was a kid, she almost died of drowning. So she decided to dedicate her life to it. And one of the things that she said to me, which was a few of the reasons I wrote the book, is to really highlight the things that most parents have never heard of before. They're like, wait, what? And one of those things was from her. And she said, if you ever have a scenario where your child, let's say they're starting to walk around and they go missing for a little bit, like you're not sure, they get up early from the nap and you're still sleeping or something like that, and you can't find them. She's like, what parents most of the time do, they'll go check a closet or under the bed. She's like, go check any water source first. Because they're top heavy. They could tip over into a toilet, into a tub, there's been instances where it's been a dog bowl, like a dog bowl with water bowl, and kids have drowned in that. And, and then also a couple other things is to use technology. Like our house is fitted. We have Alexas all over the place. So if something goes wrong, I can literally broadcast to the entire house and tell them what's going on. Like if my daughter Lana went missing, I could say, hey, everybody, Lana's missing. Go check water sources. Marcus, you do this. Yeah. And so it's not only using the people around you, but, technology like those Alexas, you can outfit your house for like a couple $100. It's ridiculous. So it's fantastic. So we have all of these tools. It's just really a matter of sort of giving over the old hump of human beings where it's not going to happen to me, right? Until it does. Right. So, yeah.
So obviously our doula clients, are preparing for baby's arrival, and we have a Becoming a Mother course, and our students are really trying to figure out what classes are important to take, at what point in pregnancy, or can some things wait until later. What is your suggestion for expecting parents on when they should take these child safety courses, and how many times they should refresh outside of, obviously purchasing your emergency book and having it on hand?
Yeah. So what I love about that course you're talking about, I believe you have like 6 modules, so video courses that you can reference and refresh, right? So as far as the timing is concerned, in my research, what I found is that about 8 weeks before you give birth would be a good time to start the process. Because if you think about it, it may even be before that. It's really kind of specific to the person. But when they're starting to, for instance, have, create the sleep environment, like how to create a safe sleep environment, that's something we cover. And I know you definitely cover it, right? So it's definitely. Like, yeah, for sure. So, it's just a matter of there's so many things that are going to be happening. I said this to a friend of mine the other day who's going to be giving birth pretty soon. It's just like, no matter how many times on the 4th child, like you never like leave the hospital, like I got this. It just doesn't happen, So all that knowledge is out the window.
Unique. Yeah. They all have different needs, temperaments. So there's no manual.
Yeah. And as far as doulas too, it's like, I know a big part of what you do is also breastfeeding, and with our youngest, just to kind of hammer that point home a little bit is, she was born with severe allergies and even allergies to the breast milk. And we didn't even know that there was something that there was a medical grade formula. We had no clue. So what do? We ended up going in and out of the hospital, testing things out. And that would have been a helpful piece of knowledge, And it's really about surrounding yourself as a parent with experts such as yourself and the knowledge. And as far, again, with the timing, we talk about life-saving skills, and that the emphasis is on the word skill. So if you kind of marry that with an emergency, one thing I like to say, and I think it's true, is we really only panic when we don't have the skills skills to solve the problem, right? So for me, it's like, well, how long does it take you individually to really learn a skill? And then as far as refreshing, to your earlier question, is, if you actually learn that skill, really believe you have a handle on it, refresh it every month at least. And then also, we have something that I created just a PDF that we give out for free, which is just called a babysitter's checklist. And the reason we do that is to really highlight some of the basic things parents should think about, once the kids get to the age where they actually have a babysitter. Now, babysitter, you might say, okay, well, I'm not going to do that until the baby is such and such years old, but I'll leave it with my parents. It's a caregiver, right? It's like you're leaving your kids with somebody, regardless of whether or not you know them, very well, or they're your parents. So they basically have to know those same skills that you know in order for you really to have peace of mind to leave the children with them. So the checklist highlights something as simple as know your address. And that might sound really obscure or not exactly an aha, but that tip came from an EMT friend of mine in New York.
Okay. It makes
and he's
sense.
like, he said, think about it this way. He's like, how many people who go to your house they know how to get there, but they don't know your address.
Babysitter wouldn't have that memorized.
No. And what's the first thing 911 is going to ask you? Where are you calling from? Because 70 to 80% of calls made to 911 are from a cell phone. And of course, if you have a landline in your house, then the 911 dispatcher will know exactly where you are. But most people don't do that. They'll call from their cell phone. So something as simple as know your address. Make sure that they know that address. And also, what we say, just spring for an extra $5, $10, have them come 15 minutes early and watch some videos on how to perform baby CPR, how to perform child CPR, choking. Get these refreshers in your babysitters and give them access to it.
Hey, Alyssa here. I'm just popping in to tell you about our course called Becoming. Becoming a Mother is your guide to a confident pregnancy and birth, all in a convenient 6-week online program. From birth plans to sleep training and everything in between, you'll gain the confidence and skills you need for a smooth transition to motherhood. You'll get live coaching calls with Kristen and myself, a bunch of expert videos, including chiropractic care, pelvic floor physical therapy, mental health experts, breastfeeding, and much more. You'll also get a private Facebook community with other mothers going through this at the same time as you to offer support and encouragement when you need it most. And then, of course, you'll also have direct email access to me and Kristen, in addition to the live coaching calls. If you'd like to learn more about the course, you can email us at info@goldcoastdoulas.com or check it out at thebecomingcourse.com. We'd love to see you there.
Right. And there's so many different trainings. Even if someone is trained, it could be an online, simple versus an in-person, skill assessment. So even asking for certifications and trainings, there are different types and levels. And so that's a good point.
Yeah. And I think about certification, I don't want to knock on certification because, of course, we highly encourage everybody to do that. And the reason being is not necessarily from a knowledge perspective, because like I said, you're unless you're in the top 10%, you're probably going to forget that, right? Exactly. And then when you're in a state of panic, you're completely useless in a state of panic, right? So what we say, though, is that from a CPR certification perspective, not to focus on the certification so much. Yes, you will get that, but the actually handling the mannequins, knowing what it feels like to give proper compressions at the correct rate and how to do a proper rescue breath. Because the mannequins these days that you train on, they have lungs, they have these airbags, that act as lungs. And we have these little meters on there that can tell you if you're going too slow, too fast, so that just getting that sort of the kinesthetic, part of it, so you can actually feel what it feels like to do it correctly is, again, just another level you can take. So get certified by all means. And, that's why we chose our nanny. We've had nannies for years and we chose them from an international agency because they required that. And you can make sure that they got trained on that. But at the same time, as I was going through this process, I understood that wasn't enough. So I would actually not only have her, learn from my own videos that I was creating, but also spot check her, and say, hey, Camilla, do you know what do you do in this situation? And then you test her. And if she doesn't know, that's fine. It's human nature. It's like being back in high school.
Right.
It's like, you're going to panic a little bit. But the main thing is you're getting it into their heads. Hey, I should go back through this.
Yeah, it's not something you use every day, so it's easy to forget. So refreshers are very important. Now, you had mentioned a bit about self-reliance and the time it takes for emergency vehicles to arrive when you call 911, and really just being able to act quicker than just calling 911.
Yeah, 911 was one of those things that when I was doing my research, which just freaked me out. I mean, it was the average response time nationally of 911 is over 10 minutes. And so, your baby or your child could become unconscious, or even an adult, within under 2 minutes, right? So it's not only that, but also, again, doing the research on 911 is they're also an auditory system, and most of us are visual learners. So here we are, like we're in a state of panic. We don't know what to do. We call 911. They tell us first thing after getting their address is to remain calm. It's like, great, thanks. That's not so easy. And then the next thing is they're going to start giving you instructions that are auditory. You can't see what's going on. Then you have to be able to visualize it and do it in a panic state. It's just one problem after the other. And then also 911 too is that they're also, understaffed a lot of the time as far as the technology. It's outdated. One of the things, like if you go to ourchildskeeper.com/911, like we have this amazing video, and it's basically a reporter who is calling a 911 dispatcher from his cell phone. And he says, "Can you tell me where I'm calling from?" And she gives an address. Now, she gives the address right in front of the director of that 911 dispatch center. And do you know she gives the address that's a quarter of a mile away?
Oh, no.
Now he's standing inside the dispatch center overlooking the call center where she's sitting, and the address is a quarter of a mile away. So it's not there. I mean, listen, I say this in the book too. It's like I'm not in any way sort of ripping into the 911 dispatchers, police, firemen, none of that stuff. It's just the bottom line is it's the system. And they all do their very, very best with what they have. But what my whole philosophy is, do that research, find out what are the gaps. And then parents really need to be self-reliant and fill those gaps themselves and not rely on someone else to save their own children. Sure, do you call 911? Absolutely. Do it every single time so somebody is on the way. Even because, just to take a scenario like choking, let's say they choke on a screw and you're able to get it out. Is everything okay then? No. They might have lacerated their esophagus. There could be any number of internal injuries. So you still want that EMS to come there immediately. Same thing with allergic reaction. That's what I mean, is we have to do our very best. But the statistic I found was that 72% of parents aren't even aware of the fact that the number one cause of childhood deaths are from accidental injuries, these accidental, unintentional injuries, most of which could have been prevented.
Yeah,
so they're not even aware of it in the first place.
Right. And you obviously cover poison. I mean, a lot of parents are worried about child-proofing, during pregnancy and getting the house ready, and what, once baby starts crawling, what needs to be in a way. Do you get into just safety with material, like poisonous materials and so on?
Yeah, not only poisonous, but also I did a video a little while back called Be Your Child's Detective, I think was the title of it. And it was basically get down on their level. And that really came from another one of these personal got lucky situations where we had some furniture that was being put together back when my oldest son was just crawling. Yeah, he was crawling, and I came home from work one day and he crawled over to say hi to me, obviously. But I noticed when he smiled, I noticed something shiny in his mouth. And I was like, what in the world? And I just calmly went over. And because I figure if I startle this kid, or, if he swallows, whatever that is, and it turned out to be a screw. So the guys came over, they put together the couch, and there was a screw under there that he could reach. Put it in his mouth. Now, is that their fault? Yeah. Well, yeah, but at the same time, it's our fault too, right?
It's like no one knew it was there. Yeah.
No, but you have to. I think that's another thing. Be your child's detective. In other words, get on their levels and do a scan. What is down there that I can't see as an adult standing up 6 feet tall or whatever you are, and get down on their level. What can they see? Where can they put their hands in there? And so it goes beyond just basic childproofing with the usual stuff. But also goes to really being situationally aware and saying, okay, well, if my child is crawling in this room, what could they maybe see or reach that I'm not thinking of? And that could just be a
screw like that.
Lamp cord. It could be a lamp cord. It could be any number of things. But that could have done serious damage to him.
For sure.
Yeah.
So any other tips from emergency to share with our audience?
Oh man, we have a ton. I did a chapter called Parent Awareness and the Million Little Things is what I called it. And it was basically, there are when you really look at a tragedy or even an injury, but basically if you think about statistically speaking, and it's super sad, just one of these statistics that I can't get out of my head. And again, it's one of those reasons for the book is like this year worldwide, nearly 1 million children will not make it to the age of 5. Now, that's not due to war, famine, or disease. This is due, again, right back to these are unintentional accidental injuries, most of which could have been prevented. And so, when you really look at those statistics, there's a lot of things that usually happen around one of these tragedies. Like there's a lot of little things that have to kind of come into place for that thing to happen. Failures in a number of different areas. And so for me, I really wanted to create a chapter on parent awareness. Like really, one of the mothers told me, she's like, these days, she says, awareness is a skill.
Yes, for sure.
And
there's so many distractions.
Yeah. And I tell parents, I'm like, listen, if you're looking down at your phone, that means you're not looking up at your kids. Right?
True.
So, and then the Million Little Things, I really want to just start sort of a list of those tips that most parents have not heard of. The one I'll just say is never feed your child while they're in a car seat. Now, how many times have you done that? How many times have I done that? I mean,
I've done it.
Yeah, I mean, all 4 kids. And I'm like, wait, what? And this was actually from the original CPR instructor who had been doing it for so many years. He heard every story under the sun. And it made so much sense. Yeah, because he said, listen, he says, choking is a silent event. What you think they may be sleeping or whatever it is, like they could be unconscious. And then by the time you get to the destination, which could be 20, 30 minutes or more away, it's way too late. So by all means, feed them something before they go and when they get there. And if you just, if it's a super long trip, that's when you have smoothies. You have something with a consistency that should not really be a choking hazard. So really, again, situationally aware, right? What could go wrong here and how can I really prevent that stuff from happening? And we really wanted to highlight a lot of those stuff in the book. And then, of course, with the training itself, if something does go wrong, now at least you have a visual way of learning how to, save that child.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I used to feed my kids puffs, but you're right, they could choke and you'd have no idea.
No idea. Yeah, we did the same thing. It's amazing kids are alive these days with all the mistakes that we've made in the past,
So in summary, it seems like preparation is key. The earlier, the better. But again, refreshing. So if a couple takes a CPR training in their second or third trimester, then they should certainly refresh when, multiple times when baby's crawling, as you said, on some of the poison and hazardous materials and water safety and so on. So,
yeah. And that's why we did the book. We did the book plus we did the masterclass. The book really is more of a motivation. I think once they read through just the introduction itself, I mean, that's where I really highlight 911 and all these issues, including, I have one part of the book with which I get a lot of feedback from that says, while everything can be Googled, not everything should be Googled, right? There are some things you shouldn't just go and put into YouTube, how to save a baby from choking or whatever, because you don't know where that information is coming from, who's giving it to you, is it updated? And then most of the time, that information is very specific to the title of that video, such as, how to save your baby from choking. That's very specific. And a lot of parents aren't aware of the fact that how you save a baby from choking under the age of 1 is entirely different than how you save a baby who's over the age of 1. It's just like you've done with your video series as well. It's really creating a place where it's on demand and they can go there 24/7 from anywhere, anytime on basically nearly any device and watch these videos and get these refresher skills all within just a few short minutes.
So they can go on to Our Child's Keeper to get more information about the masterclass and your modules and some of the handouts that you were referring to, correct, Mark?
Yes. And then as far as the book is concerned, they can get it at, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, those types of retailers. But also we've created a separate site for the book. It's a brand new site. It's called emergencythebook.com. And that'll really expand on everything and bring them through not only being able to get the book or an audiobook or ebook version, but also if they wanted to get into the masterclass, they could do that. And then I can also do private coaching as well if they wanted to do, something very specific to their family. I mean, it really goes back to, if they have 3 kids as opposed to 1, what are the ages? What are the challenges that each of those kids, have for their age, and then being ready for those scenarios. And I think the other thing too, just to, wrap that part up, is just to, you also become a valuable member of the community. This isn't just about your kids, right? I mean, you have the ability, you have the skill set, just like with doulas, the information they're going to get from your course, they're going to share. And that could very well potentially not only, have them come into your course as well, but I'm sure there are just tips in there that you have that they share with their, with their friends that could really impact their lives. So, I think what we're both doing is super important.
Right. We're with you on avoiding Google. It's like find evidence-based information,
Yes.
Go to the correct source versus randomly searching for things. So
exactly.
Well, I appreciate everything you're doing for families and also for caregivers, like you said, babysitters and doulas and other people, like even, in workplaces, to have this training. You never know whose life you might be able to save.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And by the way, I just want to say one more thing about when you say workplace, just one little extra tip is that when you have the skill, and if you're going to become a valuable member of the community, or if you are somebody who has this happen in public, whether it's in a workplace or in a mall or wherever you are, you really have to take the leadership position. Everybody gets very emotional around children and everybody freezes. You'll see this on any number of videos of a child choking in a mall. No one moves, right? And so it's very rare that anybody, moves a finger. But if you become a leader, you know what you're doing. You point to the person. You may not know who they are. Maybe in a workplace you do, but if you're in public, you don't. Right. You point to the person, said, you in the plaid shirt, call 911 and get an AED and come back because I may need your help. Then that person will, okay, now they just got a directive, right? They'll spring into action. But if you don't do that and you say, hey, somebody help, right? No, you have to really take the leadership position. And so, that's just one last tip. But again, you really only do that. We stress that in our masterclass, really to just, I think children, I have a quote on the website and I don't even remember my own quote, but it's basically, I have so many quotes at this point, but it's basically, I feel like children are really looking to us to be their leaders, right? To hold them up, keep them safe, and they deserve it. And so, looking at as a parent, as the protector, but also as the leader. And that goes for mothers and fathers. We have to know these skills on an individual basis, not rely on even your wife or your spouse, your partner, whoever it is. You have to be self-reliant. And then when you're leaving the person with somebody else, understand that you're leaving with somebody else, then make sure that they have that same or better skill set than you have.
Right, exactly. Wonderful tips. Thanks so much, Mark. And I can't wait to share your book and your masterclass information with our clients and our Becoming a Mother students.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Take care.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Ask the Doulas. For more information about Gold Coast Doulas, visit us on our website, goldcoastdoulas.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and give us a 5-star review. Thank you. Remember, these moments are golden.